Oh man, we're doing this. I'm cranking through these videos because I gotta get through all of these wonderful questions that the few of you that watch the channel have been kind enough to present to me. We've discussed a number of different things in this question that I've received quite a bit from more than one person. I say quite a bit, that would be like 2 or 3 times. What's it like being an American in Vietnam, given the loaded history that the two countries have, and given the bizarre political situation that's going on right now in the United States? Like, is everybody asking you about you know who and all the crazy, like the weird, like the white nationalism and the racism and the, you have a game show host as your president? What the hell happened? I want to address all that stuff because I think those are good questions. It makes sense. I've also had the sort of inversion of that, where it's like, man, you're so lucky you get away from all this. Like, the racism is crazy and our president is crazy, and like, you picked a perfect time to take off. Which, as I mentioned in a previous video, it totally informed part of why I left. It was not as much as the professional and the personal stuff, but the political situation was a nice kick in the ass out the door. I was already halfway through the door, and then it's like, oh yeah, your country is losing its collective mind for a number of reasons that I think it's probably best not to get too political, because that's not really what I want to do here. That's not the idea, but it's totally a part of the equation, so I'll address it. Again, here specifically, well, I'll answer the first part of the question. American people in Vietnam are not, preoccupied with a war that happened 40 years ago. It's never come up. It's not something that you see or hear. It's not present. Like in daily life, certainly it has. It's a factor. Specifically, it's a socioeconomic factor. But it's nothing that's impacted me personally, right? No one's yelling at me on the street or anything like that. I don't know what people might think, so I'm not sure what to make of the question as far as like being an American because of the war, which is known as the American War here, for the record, right? The Vietnam War is what we call it in the U.S. But I will tell you that one of my first few days in Saigon, and I blogged about it, I wrote about it, but I didn't make a video. If you go to teachertravels.net, you got to go way back to the beginning of June. I did visit the War Remnants Museum, which is like the American War Museum. And there are absolutely, there's evidence of U.S. war crimes. There's a whole gallery of portraits of victims of Agent Orange, the chemical poisoning. It's absolutely, has a huge impact on this country. But I will say that it hasn't affected me personally or my experience, in a couple months traveling here at all. In fact, when people ask me where I'm from and I say I'm from America, I'm from the U.S., I'm from Texas, everyone kind of perks up and, oh, that's very good. It seems as if there's a certain measure of admiration. I also know that in Asian cultures, and at least here anyway, you have what's called saving face. So someone's not going to insult me to my face. And I've had that conversation with people too, where it's like, oh yeah, we love, we think it's great that foreigners are here, and we love Australians and the French and the British and the Americans, and then behind our backs it's like these jokers taking up space, driving up the cost of rent, maybe. I don't know enough about it, but I'm happy to keep it on my radar and maybe address the question in the future. But for everyone, it's not made a difference to anyone, to my face anyway, that I am from America, not here. And I would say it's the opposite, in fact. There seems to be a measure of respect and admiration, and a genuine sort of like, they're happy that you're here. I'm contributing to the local economy. I'm looking to help people better their lives. I'm not here to do some evil corporate thing. I'm just a dude that wants to teach English and hang out for a little while. And that seems to be tolerated, which is good enough for me, I guess, personally, at this point. I am tolerated. I don't know if that answers the question. Sorry. I'll move on to the Trump thing. Are people inquiring? Not really. People are not bombarded with Western media here. You can, I guess, right? You can choose to consume it, but the average person here is not jumping to ask me a question, period, let alone about, one of the dozens of goofy, politically centered news stories that have been occurring every day over the last few months. It's not really come up at all. I think that people here are too busy hustling and grinding and trying to get by and trying to, put food on the table. People work really hard here for very little, which is another reason to be grateful. Doing what I've done here, and any time that I've traveled, and in the brief time that I lived in Europe, and the very brief time that I lived in South America, getting distance and perspective, and knowing that, like, hey, we have it really great, and college students, particularly college students, or politically minded people in general in the U.S., the intellectually minded, you have a lot of complaints about the United States, and I certainly have plenty of complaints about the United States. I think anyone does about their own home country. But you have to step back, and I think traveling helps to ascribe that distance and perspective, and you go, okay, things are pretty great back home, and what a blessing to be where I'm from, and there's just things that you can do in the United States that you can't do anywhere else, whether it's certain personal freedoms, or if it's just the access to tertiary education, the access to certain types of healthcare, social, cultural, growing up in this sort of incredible, diverse melting pot. I don't like that term, but there's all those things, right? So just distance and perspective, that's a piece of the pie. And I try not to lose sight of that. But honestly, people aren't asking me about Donald Trump. It's not an issue. So I think that's it. And just to say one more thing, people here, like in other countries, they love our American pop culture. And I think pop culture is a great balm. So even though, like, the political situation's goofy and maybe we have a loaded history, there's always a shared space. I think people in general, we're more alike than we are different, and I think that goes for even in a global sense. So I could, people love Nike and Levi's jeans and KFC and The Simpsons, and there's all this, I think pop culture, again, superhero culture here is great. I'm a huge fan of the superhero genre, and you can't go 5 feet without a kid wearing a shirt with something from a Pixar movie, or is Pixar still Pixar? Disney? Pixar? Anyway, Cars and Finding Nemo and Spider-Man and Thor, and it's like all that stuff. We have that shared pop culture, the love of pop culture, and I think that's something that a younger generation's not going to be hung up on a war that happened 40 years ago. We could say the same in the United States. You move on, and then of course in a spiritual context, the Buddhist belief in being mindful of the present. So being more aware of the here and now and the future, I think, is important to people here, as opposed to being hung up on the past. Right? We don't want to do that. So all of those different things, I hope, answer that question. What it's like to be an American in Vietnam. Are people asking you about Donald Trump? No, they're not. In fact, in 80 days, I'll say this and then we'll get out of here because we got that tight 10 minutes. It's come up twice. A young Vietnamese couple who are both in college, two college students, that just kind of in passing, like, what's that? What was that all about? And again, I don't want to get too political, but like, I'm not a fan of the current president of the United States. It's a disaster, I think, and we don't have to get into that. And if I lose your viewership, I guess, whatever. That's you got other issues going on, I think. Your imagined white victimhood, perhaps. So the couple asked me about it, and we had an interesting discussion about that. And then like a young French guy. It's always a young French guy. who kind of patted me on the back and like what the hell is that all about? And good luck. But it's only come up twice, and that was in a bar. So only once in like a normal conversation in 80 days and hundreds of interactions has it ever been like Donald Trump. So again, that's it. Peace and love. Thanks for the questions. See ya.